Good morning, everyone. Today we have a great presentation set up for you. Why AI is not welcome in the college applications. Our speaker is Sue Corner, who is the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions at Willamette University. She's a native Oregonian, and her higher education work history has incorporated student affairs and admission positions at universities including Oregon State University, yay, Lewis and Clark College, yay, and Willamette University, even yay. She has over 20 years at Willamette, which has allowed her to focus particularly on recruitment within Oregon and Hawaii, support for underrepresented populations, the role of alumni and parents in admission work, and strategic staff cohesion and development. Her personal interests include reading, causes that support women, and time spent at her family cabin on the Oregon coast. She earned her BA in English at Willamette University and her MED in College Student Services Administration at Oregon State University. Please welcome Sue.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I standing in the right place for this? Good. I am delighted to be here. Because I've been hanging around Willamette so long, I have long time, knowledge of the Institute for Continued Learning, but I have never been involved in any way or able to address you in any way, and so it's just delightful to be here. I know many friends who have been involved over the years, and it is such an impressive group in my estimation. The Office of Admissions here at Willamette often gets questions from community members about how they can participate in learning, whether it's taking a class or being involved in something like this, and it's always fun to be able to point them to this organization, just knowing what a great job you all do. So thanks for having me. I am excited to be here. I am hopeful that there is an understanding that I am 100% not an expert on anything AI related. I'll just get that out there right now. But I do have some expertise in the world of college admissions and enrollment, and I have some opinions based on that experience about how these two things work together. So we're going to talk a little bit about just some very, very general thoughts on artificial intelligence and how I see it kind of in the higher ed setting, not just enrollment, some of the things that we're facing. And then we're going to talk in a little bit of detail about what college applications look like these days. It's different than it has been in the past. And then specifically, we're going to zero in on the role of the essay, the writing piece that happens in college applications. And then after the break, we're just going to have story time. We're going to read I'm going to read to you, which I think is a wonderful experience that we don't get as adults nearly as much as we would like these days. I'll read some essays, some actual essays to Willamette, and then we'll get to kind of talk about them together and see the impact of what an effective essay can look like. It's really fun to read these essays. So yes, I was beautifully introduced. Thank you so much. I have been at Willamette a long time. I'm a Willamette alum, and I've been here mostly in admissions, some time spent in student activities. So I have a tremendous love for this institution and for this work. My husband and I got married in this space almost 30 years ago. So I have a real heart for Willamette and a very, very real heart for our students. And one of the things that I've come to know about enrollment work is it is an incredible privilege to get to read the applications of these young people who are putting together, this packet of information and with vulnerability saying, here I am, pick me, It's really a place of privilege to get to work with them, and specifically at Willamette. Worked in both of these components, and one of the things that I love most about admissions work as opposed to student activities work, I've loved them both, but in admissions we get to both work with the high school students and their parents, and there's real reward that comes with working with families as they go through the enrollment journey. They're just such an important part of this huge life decision. So I love that piece of admissions, and I love that we have about 30 students who work in our office as our tour guides, and we call them student ambassadors, who show our prospective students and families what Willamette is all about. And those students often stay with us their entire time at Willamette. They apply for the job at the end of their freshman year, and then they stay with us until they're seniors. And so they become this little microcosm for us of the Willamette student experience. They become part of our family in admissions, and we get to watch them come in so young and so uncertain about so many things, and they just grow so much, and we watch it right before our eyes every day coming in and out of our office. Raina's nodding because she gets to have the exact same experience. It's so rewarding. There have been so many changes over the course of my work in admissions specifically. I think about just kind of physically, we don't read paper application files anymore. We did that for years. We would lug, these baskets and buckets of files home on the weekends, and we'd move them around and schlep them to and fro. And there was a whole huge room in our office full of physical, file cabinets, and a bigger staff than we have now, who had to just manage all of the copying of the files and the making of the files and the moving of the files. It was a whole thing, and now it's all digital. So it changes our space, it changes our staffing, and there's so much else that has changed too. But it's a fascinating and exciting journey. Never, ever is one year the same as the next. And I have had, like I said, the privilege of reading thousands and thousands and thousands of college applications over the years that I've been here. And sometimes it gets to be a lot. Sometimes we get tired of reading. But really, as I mentioned before, each one is a human being. Each one represents an individual young person. And when you remember that, even if it's the 30th file you've read that day and you're feeling a little sleepy, it really does give you energy to think about these people that are behind these applications and the privilege that we have in helping them with this huge decision and big step in their young lives. So we're going to start with just some general thoughts on artificial intelligence. Once again, I am not an expert on this, but just some things that I am seeing and observing. One is just to be very clear, artificial intelligence is not the enemy to college admissions, even though the title of this session is It is Unwelcome. It's not because it's the enemy. We understand, I certainly understand, it has a place in the world. Whether we like it or not, it is happening. And so it certainly has a place in higher education. If nothing else, we need to equip our students to understand these tools as they very, very quickly evolve and can be used as tools to help them in certain ways. We have a responsibility as a university to equip our graduates with a fluency in these tools that have become very important. There also are lots of ethical implications to artificial intelligence when you think about owning your own work or presenting something to someone as your own work. Where are the lines drawn in terms of, is it truly your work? If it was robot assisted, as I like to say, or does that become somebody else's work? Whose work, who's writing originally? was used by that artificial intelligence tool to actually gather the thoughts that the student then is presenting as their own, it gets really complicated. So the ethical piece of the use of these tools is something that I think will be interesting to watch going forward, with the lens of how is higher education stepping in to being the place where this responsibility piece, the ethical piece of this, is addressed. And then there are tons of workplace implications for this for our graduates. Again, they are here to gain an education. You know, Willamette, you all are familiar with Willamette. We are a liberal arts education. We are looking to equip our students broadly to be very nimble as they head into the work world and are equipped to change as the roles in society are changing and the workplace is changing. It's happening so fast. We want our students to be lifelong learners who know how to adjust and adapt as work changes. And one of those things is clearly now that they are going to need to know how to use these artificial intelligence tools. I was at a and in part because this is such an impactful innovation, and we see ourselves at Willamette as training leaders and folks who go into the workforce and then rise because they are so well equipped to be those nimble, continually learning leaders. And so this particular tool is really important in that. And I was at a talk at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were giving some information about what workplace leaders are saying about artificial intelligence. 79% of them said they need AI to stay competitive within their field of work, whatever that might be. So that's a big number. Lot of places just saying this is something that has become essential for them to be competitive. Interesting point that early career talent will get more job opportunities if they are AI fluent. So leaders and employers are specifically looking for young people emerging from their education to have this skill. They know that many of their current employees may not. Older folks in the workforce may not yet have learned these tools or have felt intimidated by them. So there is an expectation that those younger workers are going to come with some fluency. And even to the point that leaders are more likely to hire someone if they can express and demonstrate some AI fluency, even if they aren't very experienced in other parts of the job. That AI fluency, right now, these leaders are saying, is going to supersede the desire for experience within the field. So it's really important. And again, as a higher education institution, we want to prepare students who are ready for this workforce that is clearly asking for these tools. So also in that session that I was attending, there were some ideas that were floated that I kept connecting to things that I see happening here at Willamette as we think about how do we respond. AI is not just something we're talking about in admission, obviously. Our faculty had a long kind of extended workshop all summer talking about AI in the classroom. There are implications for other work functions in the university. There's certainly questions about academic dishonesty among students using AI or not understanding when and how they can use AI. So all kinds of ideas about this question that really affect the entire university. So there is a thought that universities are going to need to move to this idea of a director of AI strategy so that we don't have siloed groups in different parts of the university saying, well, we're going to do this where it's concerned, and somebody over here is saying, well, no, we're going to do this. There needs to be some comprehensive strategic thinking about these tools, how they're assessed, how they're used, how they're controlled, all of those things. It really needs to be centralized. And I'm kind of jumping around on this slide, but it starts with the classroom and doesn't mean necessarily that all of the classrooms will have the same approach. There's some thinking that, for instance, at Willamette, we have certain courses within the curriculum that are considered writing-centered, and students have to have a certain number of writing-centered courses in order to graduate. So there's a question, can those writing-centered courses use AI as they are, in their assignments? I think many of those faculty would say, no, these are courses where this is not appropriate. We are truly developing personal skills in unassisted writing. Now, we are talking about, as a university, having courses similarly designated as AI-centered courses, separate from writing-centered, but these would be courses that students need to have 1 or 2 or 3 of in order to graduate, where AI is used as a tool in that class, and students are therefore gaining that knowledge and practice in how to use these tools. These are ideas. None of this is implemented yet, but these are the ideas that we're dealing with that other places are dealing with also. Also, the idea of AI certifications. Kind of a thought of a 4-week workshop that a student can opt into. It's not a class, but it's a workshop that they go to every Saturday for 2 weeks, for 2 hours. And at the end, they can have this badge or certification that they can then put on their resume that says, I've done this extended AI certification. So again, demonstrating to those business leaders and those employers that they have some fluency here. The question of AI in the classroom specifically and around academic dishonesty, there was an example given recently to me that I thought was so interesting of, one of the problems is students who have learned to use different AI tools to help them. They feel better their writing, and in some cases maybe they're bettering their writing. In some cases it doesn't turn out that great. But if they're using it in some way and then they're turning that in, is the professor really able to truly assess what that student knows or what they've learned if that writing has been assisted? So it was suggested the great way to actually assess students' understanding, if they're being asked to, say, write a paper about something they've read or lectures they've sat in on, have AI generate the essay, the professor has AI generate the response. And then the student's job is to assess AI's writing. And the students who have actually done the reading and been at the lectures and paid attention, they can spot in a heartbeat the places where AI has hallucinated or made things up that aren't correct or drawn conclusions that are wonky. And so it's this incredible way of teaching students both assessing the students who have actually done what they're supposed to do, but also of understanding the subtleties and the problems with this tool. I thought that was a really, really interesting example. So, bottom line, no matter what we're doing as a university and as an industry across, as higher ed across the country, this is something that's here to stay, and we need to figure out how to live with it ethically, responsibly, and use it to our advantage without it taking over, right? So those are thoughts on AI. Now let's talk about the application a little bit. We're going to switch gears. What's the goal of the college search and application process? Call out thoughts. There's lots of answers.
Find the student with the best fit for the university and the university for those students.
Sure, find the best fit. That's a word that gets used often. Yeah. Exceptionalism, demonstrating, yeah.
Leadership.
Sure. Literacy, sure. Other thoughts? Demonstrating, absolutely, well-roundedness.
Initiative.
What's that?
Initiative.
Showing initiative, sure. demonstrating preparation and readiness for college. There's somebody else back here.
Organization.
Demonstrating organization, sure. Becky?
Prepare good citizens.
Preparing good citizens, absolutely. There's so many answers that factor into this. When I ask this question, I do writing workshops frequently for students and parents, and when I ask this question of them, what's the goal of your college search? What is the goal of applying to college? They will often first say, just to get in. I'm going through this whole thing because I need to get in. And sometimes there's this thought that it's almost a game, like they need to sneak in or trick their way in, you know. So just to get in seems to be the goal for many. To find the right fit, which was a word that was used, making sure that you're searching in a way that you're finding a place that aligns with who you are and, is a good fit for you academically. Certainly part of the search includes seeking out scholarships and financial aid. If a student isn't a good fit financially for a place, they can't afford it, then it's not a good fit for them over the course of their time there because they will be so stressed about the financial piece. Find a place with the right major. The search often includes lots of, thoughts about what the student ultimately wants to study and do, and so seeking that major. So lots of reasons, and all of the things that you said too. As on our side, it's assessing preparation and exceptionalism and merit and all of those things. But I think there is one really important answer to this question that almost never comes up. But from my standpoint as a longtime college administrator, I think it might be the most important one. The ultimate goal of the college search is not to get in, but it's to get out, right? If you just get in and you stay for 3 weeks and then you're done, you've accomplished nothing. And again, that goes back a little bit to that. I need to work this game and, finagle my way into some really highly selective place, because getting in is all that it's about. I would contend that it's about getting out at the end, emerging after 4 years, having had a transformational academic experience, made lifelong friends and memories, and earned a degree that will influence life success. It's about the whole experience. It's about the whole 4 years. It's about the launch pad that represents for life after college. It's not just about getting in. So sometimes when I talk with families and prospective students about this, it can shift a little bit the way they're thinking about their college search. It is not just about that. Can I possibly get into this place that my cousin said is a good college? No, it's about, can you search for and find a place where you authentically fit, where you're gonna thrive, where you're gonna feel comfortable and be able to really gain confidence and learn and, again, make friends. It is such a precious time in the life of these young people. And so to have the search really embrace this idea of completion rather than just entrance, to me is really important. So because of that, application review involves kind of a complicated system of matching students with the university and assessing their preparation. And in some cases, institutions have, kind of access that's based almost entirely on numbers. If you have this test score and you have this GPA, you're either in or out. It's very, very numbers based. And that is the reality for places that have, tens of thousands of applications, and they just have to make a deciding point based on something pretty simple. I feel really lucky at Willamette that we use what is called holistic review, which means that applications, every component of the application for admission is considered. Again, it's this virtual stack of papers that the student is handing us represents who they are, and we need to look at all of it and understand everything about them to get as much context about their life and who they are and what they've learned and where they come from, in order to really understand their preparation and readiness and fit for our institution. So there are so many bits of information that we collect as part of the application, and much of this, I think, has not changed over time. The format in which we receive it and some of the content has changed a little bit, but the basics are the same, and they're the same for almost all colleges. We seek a little bit of biographic information. Who are they? Where did they go to school? Who are their parents? Do they have siblings? That sort of thing. We ask for a list of the current classes that they're taking. We want to know in their senior year, and I'm talking mostly about first year students here, not necessarily transfer students, which there are some different components, but for seniors in high school, we want to know what they're studying in this important senior year. Often we'll make an admission decision before we see how they're doing in their senior year. We often make the decision in December of their senior year, so we haven't yet seen grades, but we want to know what classes they're taking. And we reserve the right to change our opinion if they really, really struggle in those senior year classes. We're really interested in a list of activities and the things they've been involved in, and this is one thing that I think has changed a little bit over time. Students often will think of this initially as, what are the school-based activities that I'm involved in? Have I been in a play, or have they been on a team, or been in the choir, or whatever that might be? But we are super interested in community service that may or may not be attached to school. We're interested in church involvement, in family assistance in some way. You know, we see kids all the time who serve as interpreters for their parents and grandparents. That's a huge commitment, and that's a huge responsibility, and we want to know that some of their time is going to that. If they've held a part-time job, or they've done something interesting with one of their summers, all of that counts as activities and involvement. We care about everything that they're doing. Again, the application is about the context of, where is this student coming to us from? What are all the things we can know about them? So that activities and involvement piece really gives us a broad understanding of how they spend their time. The transcripts obviously are a really important part of the application, but it's not just the GPA that's on that transcript. We are looking very closely at the choices that the student has made in terms of the classes that they've taken, and that can vary widely from school to school, what kinds of classes are offered. So we're looking at, what have they chosen to take given what's available to them? Are they challenging themselves within the context of their school? We're looking at specific subject areas. Maybe they're just really not good at math, but everything else looks good, and that math piece might lower their GPA, their overall GPA. But honestly, that's okay if we can understand that in every other way they're ready for Willamette. They don't necessarily have to take a bunch of math when they get here. So looking at the transcripts in a very detailed way. We get recommendations from counselors and teachers, and those are incredibly helpful. Sometimes they will shed light on an experience or a circumstance for a student that we know nothing about, that the student has not chosen to share in some other part of the application, and that can be really, really helpful. There's a school report form that helps us understand the context of the school, so we know what the students' choices have been. We know if it tends to have a college-going culture or not. We understand if it's a rural school or not. It gives us just kind of a real full report of what the school is all about. Students can choose to attach a resume if they want to add kind of to our understanding of that activities list. They produce an essay. And then sometimes, depending on the different institutions, they might be asked to do some short answer essays as well. Willamette asks for the primary essay, and then we ask for a shorter essay on why Willamette. Just why are you interested in Willamette? So all of this, I mean, that's a long list. I'll go back to that for a second. That's a lot of things that the student is being asked for. And think if you had to submit all of this, and then all they do is look at your GPA and your test score. I didn't even put test scores up here because we don't look at them very routinely anymore. But it would be frustrating to submit all of this and know that it doesn't really matter. So again, I feel really lucky to be at a school where we get to look holistically at everything. Because when we take all of these components together, We really get a picture of the student as a person. We understand their interests. Those tend to come through very clearly in the things that they write about and the things that they list as their activities. Sometimes challenges that they've faced come through. That can come through from the counselor or a teacher, or it can come through in something they choose to write about. We certainly can see through the transcript and through comments by others where they really excel, the things that they're excellent at. That tends to come through. Often they share with us what they want to do next. They think they want to be a lawyer, or they think they're heading down the path toward public health, or whatever their intention might be. We get a sense of their goals and what they want to achieve through taking part in our educational experience. Their values will come through sometimes in the things that they choose to take part in. We can see a through line sometimes in terms of social service organizations, or again, churches or synagogues, or things that they're choosing to take part in where they're displaying in their young life, a passion and a value for something. And then again, we see strengths and weaknesses. We can tell sometimes when there's an area where they've struggled, especially academically, and that's okay. Everybody's imperfect. No application is perfect, but it's great to be able to assess those strengths and weaknesses and understand how it fits in with preparation to be here. So many of those components that I just listed are not something that can be influenced by artificial intelligence. They're kind of little data points. They're just lists. They're just little things. A list of classes, a list of grades, a list of activities. These are not things that AI can help these students with. I guess you could ask AI to put together, the perfect application, and it would come up with something. But that would be such a level of fraud that we would hope students won't go down that path. But so all of these little things can't be influenced. And then the things that come from someone else who is supporting the student in their application, the letters of recommendation from the counselor and teachers, those cannot be influenced. At least the student cannot use AI to influence what those letters look like. They come directly to us from the school. The student can't somehow fake their way into those. Now, are there teachers and counselors who are using ChatGPT to help write those letters? Absolutely. Does that bother me? Not really. I think they're using these tools with integrity to still reflect the individual student, but to speed up the process of the incredible burden of letter writing that these counselors and teachers now have in so many schools. When you have a counselor who has a caseload of 600 students, and they're being asked to write a letter of recommendation for, many of them, that's just not very doable, and not in a way that truly reflects the student. So if they can use a tool that moves that along a little bit more quickly, that is a place where I'm okay with AI coming through. I think it assists their quality of life and actually probably means we're getting letters that are a little bit better for these students. So much of this application, so many of the components are not susceptible to AI use, but there is one component that is highly susceptible. I heard it. Can you say it? The essay, obviously, yes. It is the essay, the one kind of major piece of writing that is in this application. And it is the greatest risk by far, and we've seen a ton of it over the last few years as students have started to use this tool. You can tell when they have written something, when they have submitted something that is not their own work. There are all kinds of clues. They'll write the essay using ChatGPT, but then they won't realize that they have to write that short why Willamette piece, and the two don't match at all in terms of type and quality of writing. There's writing throughout the application, even if it's just in little bits. So if the essay looks wholly different than all of those other pieces of writing, we can tell that they're using a tool. So it's a risk because the essay has two really just very clear and set purposes within the application. When we're thinking holistically about all of the things that we're trying to gather and understand about a person through that set of credentials that we ask in the application, the essay has two really clear purposes. It's an academic measure of preparation, your preparation for college. ChatGPT didn't write this. It's my typo. It's very clearly an academic measure of preparation. So, for instance, if we're reading an application, I'm reading an application, and the student's transcript has some troubled spots, and I'm a little bit worried, are they going to struggle so much here that they won't be successful? We want them to struggle a little, because that's good. Learning happens when they struggle. But we want to match enough that students can come and learn to thrive. And if the transcript has some concerns, because they haven't chosen curriculum that's challenging enough, or they've really struggled in multiple areas, whatever it might be, the next place we look, absolutely, to try to understand, are they ready? It's the essay. We see it as a measure of their readiness. It is a clear, should be a clear example of their preparation to be in class. So it's that purpose. And then it just really helps us understand who they are as a person. All of these things together do, but the essay does in a way that's different than any of those other little data points that I mentioned. They all help, but as we're reading through an application and we're reading the biographic information and the list of activities and the grades and and then you get to the essay, it's like the student started talking to you. It's a wholly different experience within that 20 minutes that you're spending reading that student's file. It is like their voice suddenly opens up to you, and you really see the person. So it's special. If I'm reading files at home and then I come in the next day and want to ask a colleague if they've read a certain file, almost always, I'll say, did you read Susie Q's file? And they'll say, oh, are they the person that wrote about their aquarium? Or are they the person who wrote about, always the way we attach that file in our minds, almost always, is what they wrote about. It's the essay that stands out. It's the place in the application where students can really show us who they are and distinguish themselves from others. If we're reading 30 files in a day, it's that essay that we remember the most. So, the essay really is, in my opinion, the heart of the application. It is the soul of the student as it comes through, if they choose, to truly use it in the way that it is offered as an opportunity to them. It's the heart of the application, and it is at the greatest risk for the use of students using a tool that is neither their voice, nor their experience, nor their ability. It's not a reflection of their ability. And they're replacing that with this piece of the application that is so important for us. So if that essay is written by a robot, as I like to say, we're not getting that student's voice. We simply aren't. It is something else. I would say even if the student uses one of these tools to start the essay, and then they go back and make lots of changes of their own, I would venture to say it still doesn't come through in the way that students who write on their own are bringing forward who they are. And then truly, if it's written by a robot, we cannot accurately assess their academic ability to come into Willamette and enter into those writing-centered courses that I mentioned earlier that do not allow AI usage. Those writing-centered courses that are so critical to the skills that we need these students to develop, which include learning to write and communicate unassisted. And ultimately, it's a violation of the application's rules. At the end of the application that students fill out, they have to sign that says, this is all my work. It's not my mom's work. That used to be the big problem. Mom didn't write the essay, or some hired counselor didn't write the essay. Now to me, it includes some robot didn't write write the essay. So schools it's the Wild West right now in terms of what colleges are saying to applicants in terms of, can I use AI to help me at least start my essay? Can it be part of what I'm doing even a little bit? So everybody's having to come up with their own policy. This is ours, which basically just says, we get it that ChatGPT and other AI uses are good tools, but in this instance, we're asking you not to use it. We're just very clear. That's it. It will have applications, but in this instance, please don't use it. They still sometimes do. So everybody's coming up with a policy. I know I'm close to time here, but everybody's having to figure out that policy, and it's confusing right now to applicants because they might be applying to different institutions that have different policies. So they might be able to use an AI-assisted essay for one place and not for another. Or they're going to willing to risk, I did this AI-assisted essay for this place, and I'm going to risk submitting it also to a place that says I can't, which we don't love. So does everyone agree about any sort of policy around this? Absolutely not. There's nothing standardized. Nobody agrees across the industry about this. But in my opinion, and I feel like it's an informed opinion, does AI-generated essay help or harm our process of evaluation? I think if you see what I've just laid out to you, it harms our process of evaluating the student's readiness for Willamette. We don't want to set anyone up for failure. We need to understand who they are and what their ability is. And if we can't do that through this incredibly important part of the application, it's harming our process. So there is very important integrity, in my opinion, in maintaining true and actual writing standards in the application for admission process. This is not going to be true industry-wide. There will be people who disagree with me, but in my opinion, with a holistic application review at a place like Willamette where we have high academic standards, this is the only way to maintain integrity. So my conclusion, after all of that, goes back to the title of this session, which is it's unwelcome in the application process because it takes that heart out of the essay, and it removes our ability to truly assess and understand this person in a way that we are trying so hard to do. So, it's not letting me move forward. Well, we're done. Conclusion, we're done. We have time for a few questions on all of this, and then when we come back after the break, what we really will do is it'll be story time. We'll look at actual essays, and I think it will demonstrate very clearly why it's so important for these people to come through.
Hi, this is Gwen Ellen, and I have, one is a yes-no question, and then the others. So, are students that are recruited for athletics, and do they go through a different process?
Not at Willamette, and not at most institutions. They are required to apply in the same way. Now, football players at D1 institutions can have a backdoor that's very different, but for the most part, students are all required to complete the application.
And high schools aren't requiring a lot of writing now. How has that affected your?
We see some essays that are very subpar, and in a worrisome way, we can see a student who has great grades in an AP English class, and yet their writing isn't great. So that tells me things are different in the classroom in certain schools than they used to be. So we're having to contend with that and still understand, okay, is this student ready? And can we help repair some of that preparation that isn't there?
So guys, I hope this doesn't hit feedback. Anyway, my name is Tom. I am a retired English professor. I've taught many writing classes. And my first question was, I agree with you, first of all, entirely
Good.
in your judgment about banning AI categorically. Because as one of my advisors once told me, he put it very simply. He said, premises are pathetic. In other words, everything you write is ultimately based on a set of presuppositions that are rooted in your own lived experience and your emotional response to that lived experience, no matter what you're writing. And of course, AI has no lived experience. And so they take on whatever the pathetic premise is of whoever designed them and, set them loose. Like Elon Musk, for example. Don't even start on that. But the question that I have is about your essay. Do you have any specific prompts that you used for that essay that can help them individuate themselves as they write?
Great question. And yes, there is a set of prompts. And there is an application form that we use at Willamette and that over 1,000 colleges in the U.S. use. It's called the Common application because that's exactly what it is. It's common. So students can fill it out once. Because the credentials are all the same, we all ask for the same thing. It's silly to fill out Willamette's application and then Lewis and Clark's application and then UPS's application if it's all the same information, right? So about 40 years ago, the Common App said, let's do it this way. They can fill it out once and then submit it to each place. And then each place can also ask a few side questions of their own. So the Common application has a set of prompts. So the vast majority of students who are applying to college these days use the Common application, and they're using that set of prompts. And they will change out a prompt here and there every year or two, but for the most part, they're kind of set. And they're pretty broad. I'll read several of them to you when we read the essays, because I'll read the prompt first so you can see what the student is responding to. But they're expansive so that they give students a lot to choose from in terms of what they want to write. But they're very human. They are asking questions about the human experience and the student's personal journey in a way that, again, it's so important that it be the student's work. Yeah, about right here. Oh, sorry.
Brad, two questions. Do you disregard standardized test scores because they have proven to be not predictive of academic success? Secondly, if you had 10 Caucasian boys applying and you had one non-Caucasian woman applying, all equally qualified, and you only had one slot, are you trying to achieve also a gender and race balance in your selection so that you would select the minority
right
over the majority?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, with test scores, lots of schools in the pandemic went test optional or stopped requiring standardized test scores because there was this huge barrier where students couldn't get into the test centers, they couldn't take their tests, and so they were panicking that they couldn't go to college because they didn't have an SAT score. So lots of schools moved away from that, and many of them have stayed test optional or even test blind. Test optional means you can submit them if you want, if you have them, if you feel good about them, if you'd like them to be considered, you can. Or test blind is, nope, we just don't want them no matter what. We don't want to look at them, they don't work. Willamette is test optional, and we have been since before the pandemic, and it's precisely because of what you said. Some of our faculty did a long-term study looking at, are they predictive for either success or failure? Do these really high score students automatically do really well at Willamette, or do students with a much lower score really, really struggle? And the correlation was so minimal. The correlation at Willamette and places like Willamette is, are you a day-to-day student who can achieve in the classroom over time? Can you be a good, hard, steady worker and have that produce results? That's predictive at Willamette. So That's why I sometimes even forget to talk about test scores these days, because they just aren't very influential for us. What was the other part of your question? Oh, right. So that is a hard question for us. Now, I think at some of the institutions that only get to admit 5% of the students who apply, so they are just, we call them, rather than highly selective, they're highly rejective. They just, I don't know how those folks do their jobs. It would be so demoralizing, I think. And I think in those settings, those admission committees sometimes probably come down to that scenario that you're talking about, where is it student A or student B? Who do we choose and how do we choose? And where do we factor in kind of shaping the overall admitted class in a way that represents diversity of thought and background and economics and all of that. We don't think about that at Willamette. We are able to say yes to a lot of our applicants. We see a really talented applicant pool, so we get to say yes to a lot of them. And we don't even, overtly, we don't know their race or ethnicity in the application. We collect that data, it comes through on the application, but it's hidden from us as we read the application because of the SCOTUS decision a few years ago. We aren't admitting based on that at all. Now, often there are lots of context clues, just even in the form of a name. So we can sometimes guess at that, but we're not making decisions based on that. When it's all said and done, we absolutely hope, and I think we've been very fortunate at Willamette, to see an incoming class that represents all kinds of different students from different places and schools of sizes and shapes that are varied, and different parts of the country and different political thought and different religious backgrounds. All of that we hope to see, but it doesn't come down to this one or that one. So I don't know how to choose.
Hi,
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm Nili. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Very interesting.
Good.
I had to write down my question, so I'll remember. So first of all, just as a point, I know there's practicality and efficiency in providing prompts, but I also think not providing prompts may be a better way of looking at the students, because then what they choose to write about is part of who they are. Mm-hmm. So when I was writing my essay way back, I had to choose a topic, but for the life of me, I can't remember what that was.
Right.
But I think the importance of the essay is incredible, because it's what got me into graduate school, because my test scores were not so great. I came from a small college without any big reputation. I went directly from college to graduate school. I had no experience, but I think I wrote a pretty good essay. And so that got me in. So you were talking about some of the telltale signs of this is a robot-assisted essay by comparing it to other writing in the application. And if there's a huge mismatch, you know this is not good. And I find that reading content that is AI generated is different. There are different ways and something that smells fishy about it, but do you have any other mechanisms to tell whether the essay was AI generated or written by the student?
Well, just first, very quickly about the prompt thing. Within the prompts that are given, there's such breadth that students do still really have to think a lot about what they're going to write about, because there's just a topic within that prompt that they have to come up with, and sometimes they agonize ridiculously over, what do I write about? What's the right topic? And there's no right topic. But I hear what you say. It's it is good for them to have to think about that. In terms of recognizing AI within the essay, we've started to check that in many. If we suspect that it's AI generated, we'll sometimes run it through an AI check checker, ChatGPT, and it will say this is 80% suspected that it's AI assisted, or it's 100% or whatever. The problem is occasionally we'll put something that we wrote 100% on our own through one of those checkers, and it will go, yeah, this is AI. So AI does not truly know how to check itself, so that's become problematic. But there are some telltale signs. Generally, AI-assisted writing loves like these series. Sorry, I've done that too many times. These series of threes within sentences, and it will do that throughout. It will use very general terms like colleagues instead of friends or classmates. We had some poor kid a couple of years ago who just put the topic into ChatGPT. I'm not sure he even read it. He cut and pasted and put that in his application to the point that it said regenerate at the bottom. And he cut and pasted that part too. Like, he missed the whole point. But that essay, I remember specifically, it was talking about his colleagues. And it's like, you're a kid in high school, you don't have colleagues. He was talking about his friends. So there are some things that are just really, really clear. But to me, the biggest, when I see our admissions committee saying, I suspect AI in this application, it's because of the mismatch with other pieces of the application. You only get that if you're doing that kind of holistic review that we get to do. So.
Hi, this is Cassia. This is an unlikely scenario, but I'm quite interested in how you would handle it, which is you're assuming now that most of your applicants are going to be coming in from an American high school or something. Okay, what about foreign students who come in from foreign high schools with their records in other languages and different grading systems, all of that sort of stuff? How is that handled, if it is?
It definitely is, yeah. We get a number of applications from other countries, and the systems are very different. In my experience, it's just important to have at least one staff member who has a really clear understanding of some of the nuances of those different educational systems. We have that. We have one counselor on our staff of 12 who is an expert in international. She works with all of our international students, and we don't have thousands of them, but we have enough of them that she has had to develop expertise in how you sort out what their background might look at. We have some different lenses for how we look at their writing if they're not a native English speaker. Obviously, that can be true of somebody in the U.S. or from abroad. And we have there are some tools, some services that we buy into that will help evaluate the transcript of students from other countries where we just don't have that level of expertise. So there's sort of experts we can go to who can help us with that. Okay, I saw somebody make a gesture like this, which I think means we have to take a break, but there will be lots of time for questions. Yeah.
Perfect. 10 minutes.
Okay, everybody. Now it's story time. So I'm going to read to you a few essays that I've collected over the years. There's so many to choose from, but I've picked a couple that have stood out to me for different reasons, and so I'll read them. Close your eyes and listen if you'd like, whatever makes it fun for you to just be read to. And then afterward, I'll be really interested in your thoughts and opinions, and then I'll share some of my thoughts and opinions about these specific essays. I have 3 of them to read. So the first one, the prompt is, discuss an accomplishment or event, formal or informal, that marked your transition from childhood to adulthood within your culture, community, or family. So really broad, you can see. And this one starts with, at the top of the page, it kind of has a title, which isn't required, and most students don't do that. But in this case, it says social capital, and then in parentheses, noun. So it's like a dictionary definition. Social capital, The network of social connections that exists between people and their shared values, which enable and encourage mutually advantageous social cooperation. I grew up in Meeker, Colorado, a Rocky Mountain town of 2,500 people. Both of my parents' families were community cornerstones, holding high social capital. My dad's family ran the local grocery store, and my mom's a reputable cattle operation. My siblings, too, graduated from Meeker High School, meaning everyone expected me to become a 3-sport varsity athlete, get involved in church and charity work, and maintain a perfect GPA, as they had done. Had the setting been different, none of it would have mattered. But from an early age, it felt like I was expected to write the next chapter in a multi-generational legacy. As media stereotypes would suggest, high school was the catalyst for fame in my small town. But the summer before my freshman year, my parents decided to move 1,200 miles northwest to Scio, Oregon. We packed our belongings, bringing everything with us except the reputation and tradition of the family name. As we left the city limits, I felt almost naked. Starting a new life with a clean slate proved difficult. On the first day of school, it surprised me when my classmates didn't save a spot for me in the front of the classroom, and my teachers asked if I felt comfortable reading aloud. At home in Meeker, everyone knew I had always worked hard to be an exceptional student. On that day began the hardest test I'd ever faced. Never before had I experienced the lows of loneliness and homesickness. Like a sailor thrown overboard in choppy water, I plunged into high school with 2 clear choices. Trying to fit in by being someone I wasn't felt worse than drowning. To be myself, an athlete, scholar, fun-loving weirdo, was tough. But when I worked up the courage, it was like learning to save myself from the rough seas, and I chose to swim. Even today, midway through my senior year, it continues to be challenging to act authentically and craft the legacy that I desire. I've learned that my reputation can't be formed with words, rather it's defined by my actions. Whether those actions include being the most rambunctious fan at the football games, leading the school as the student body president, or studying to ace the semester finals, they all contribute to the formation of a reputation I'm proud of. There's a photo of me from the day my family moved from Colorado. I'm sitting on the tailgate of our pickup truck, a floppy-haired kid, smiling hard to conceal the uneasiness I felt. Next to that picture sits a proof for my senior portraits. I've grown 6 inches, gotten stronger, but the most shocking difference is how comfortable I look, sporting my favorite purple shirt, the smoothness of my brow, the void of tension, and the gratitude-fueled grin painted across my face. My journey to the Northwest has served as the bridge from childhood over the waters of adolescence into adulthood. It has been more profound than any event in my lifetime. Here I find myself again on the brink of another big move from high school to college. Last time I had no say in the matter, but the benefit of being thrown from my comfort zone was nothing but positive and formative. This time I'm not only excited, but ready. I know who I am, I know what I want, and I can't wait to make it happen. Is that fun to hear? That is not AI generated. So tell me, I know we don't have the mics out, but what did you like about it? Literary, authentic. Introspective, yes, very self-reflective, this young person. Well written, absolutely.
Emotional.
It's emotional, yeah. Authentic.
Honest. It was conversational.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't academic.
Conversation, yep, exactly. It's got a great just storytelling quality, I think, yeah.
Did he get in?
He got in. Yeah. You knew that after the first paragraph. Yeah. Oh, did he get out? Yeah. He didn't come. He got into Willamette and then chose to go somewhere else. So I don't know. You wonder, right? Yeah. So I'll tell you some of the things that I noticed. Social capital. Wonderful storytelling quality. I think sometimes students, when they're placing pressure on themselves to write this very important piece of writing, they think it has to be really big, flowery words and this very, very highly structured kind of academic paper. And that isn't the case at all. This student has a talent for writing, I think, but it's not highly academic. They just sat down and clearly told a story and painted a picture with pretty typical word usage, you know? But that really speaks to me. I think they did an amazing job in this essay of cramming in a bunch of little details that may or may not have come up elsewhere in the application. You know, they mentioned church and charity work. They mentioned siblings. They mentioned being the student body president. All of these little things that are just additional clues to me about who they are and what's been important to them and what they've achieved. There's lots of reference, obviously, in this to kind of values and character and being authentic to themselves in this new school. And they just did a beautiful job of incorporating all of those things without it disrupting the story. It wasn't like they stopped and said, and by the way, I want to brag for a minute about all of these things. Some students do that and it just becomes choppy and it's not nearly as authentic. They used imagery, right? That little bit about, I chose to swim. I felt like I'd been thrown overboard and I chose to swim. And they really tied that beautifully to the prompt, kind of this bridge over the choppy waters of adolescence. This is not something that everybody does, but when a student finds a way to incorporate some sort of little literary device into their writing, to me, again, I was an English major. I care a lot about this stuff. But that says to me, oh, they've got some skills. They've been paying attention. They're probably a reader, you know, and that is all a very good sign. Again, there's use of language in this is very straightforward. They don't use a bunch of words that would be atypical for a student of their age. And so I try to share this kind of essay with students and families who are panicking about their essay to demonstrate it's not about somehow putting in all of these words that you wouldn't typically use. In fact, that's something that sometimes ChatGPT will do. Oh, and then there's a vulnerability here that I love. And this is something we talk with families about a lot. It's amazing when there's an aspect to the essay that moves us as the reader in some way, whether it makes us cry or it makes us laugh, that can be hard to do, to write funny. Or we learn something about a topic that we didn't know something about before. All of those things are really appealing in an essay and will make it stand out. And particularly when there's vulnerability. It doesn't mean we have to be moved to tears, but when a student is willing to say, this was really hard for me. I'd never before been lonely. Oh, you know, that really is an emotional connection to the reader and makes me remember that writer. And I love it when students will incorporate that. And then the topic here, sometimes I'll ask the audience, you know, what's the topic? And people will say all kinds of different things. But really, when it comes right down to it, the topic is that he moved. His family moved from one place to the other. And sometimes we have students who are just, again, agonizing over, do I need to write about my parents' divorce because then that will, cause them to feel bad for me and I'll have more likelihood of getting in. You know, does it need to be a sob story? Or do I write about, this honor that I've received? Or is that too braggy. You know, they get all in their heads about what they should write about, and that there's, you know, only one topic that that is the right one for them, and they don't know what it is. And I try to reassure people that truly any topic will generally work for this application. They just have to write about it in a way that's unique to them and authentic to them. So to move is a really common experience. Lots of kids have moved in their life. The way he took that very basic topic and made it so beautifully told in this story that's what sets it apart. It's not the topic itself, it's the way he surrounds words around that topic. Okay, let's read another one. So this one, the prompt is, discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourselves or others. You may laugh at the first few words of this essay, just because of who we are in this room. Old people love clam chowder and pickled beets. You can tell them your name is Katie, but expect to be called Kate, Catherine the Great, Kathy, or anything else even remotely similar. If you forget an old person's name, take the chance of calling them Bill, Bob, or Jim. You will likely be right. These are the few important lessons I have learned while working as a dining room server at Madrona Hills Retirement. Where I work, everyone is a regular, setting my job apart from other servers. Each day I smile and greet each resident by name. I know exactly who sits in what seat and whether they drink decaf or regular coffee. I have found comfort and humor in the familiarity I share with the residents, whether they treat me like their own grandchild or slap my hand away as I reach for their empty ice cream dish. And then in parentheses it says ... Mary. Working with funny and grouchy residents alike, I have realized that interacting with old people is an incredibly rewarding experience, for they have taught me so many valuable lessons without even trying. Dorothy is 98 years old, which means she gets whatever she wants whenever she wants it. Each day, she wears her uniform of pearls and her yellow cardigan. Her day begins with orange juice, 2 eggs over easy, and white toast, which she eats methodically while reading the morning paper. Dorothy must always inspect the nightly dessert before deciding if she wants it, and if she does, decaf coffee must appear instantaneously in her mug. Most of my coworkers avoid Dorothy due to her specific demands, but for some reason I find myself drawn to her and her quirks. By observing Dorothy's opinionated nature, I have learned the value of routine and detail. She is equally excited each morning as she was the day before at the sight of her monotonous breakfast, and I think that is beautiful. Unknowingly, Dorothy has inspired me to relish in the comfort of daily intricacies rather than dwell in the boredom of sameness. Another impactful resident I've come to know is Raleigh, whom I met accidentally in the supply room. I went searching for the mop at the end of my shift, but instead I happened upon Raleigh cooling off in front of the air vent. We began chatting about sports and school, but the conversation quickly became one-sided as I listened to his stories from his career as a teacher and coach. Raleigh told me about the honor of being voted Teacher of the Year by his students and being inducted into the Cribbage Hall of Fame. From Raleigh's eagerness to share his story with me, I sensed that perhaps he had wanted to tell it for a very long time. Tears filled my eyes as he explained that young people have always been the light of his life. By the time I finally departed, all my coworkers were long gone, the lights off in the kitchen. Although I unintentionally stumbled upon Raleigh that day, our encounter has left a lasting impression on me. Because of him, I have gained an immense appreciation for the life experiences of those I serve. Raleigh has lived a lifetime of incredible stories, which he generously shared with me. For that, I will always be grateful. Working has taught me many practical skills, but I have learned much more than how to be a server. These hilarious, sweet people have taught me so much about life simply by sharing theirs with me. Dorothy and Raleigh are merely two examples of the characters I have grown to admire at Madrona Hills. With every glass of buttermilk I pour for Big John, and every nightly loaded baker I serve to Billy, I gain respect for the wisdom and humor these wonderful people have brought to my life. What stands out about that one? Very personal. Yeah. Wonderful sense of compassion. Yeah, you truly see that come through. Humor, yeah. Humor is hard. It's hard to be funny in writing and not kind of go overboard or miss the mark. Somebody said something over here. Yes. Definitely not AI. Yeah, very personal stories.
Painted a picture with words.
Definitely. Yep. You're picturing Mary with her, or Dorothy with her pearls and her sweater, and yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a real talent, I think, to be able to paint a picture with words.
This person has an openness to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. An openness to those around them and learning from them. Yeah. Insight. Yeah. Yeah.
It took the little things that were occurring and found significance in them.
The details make the story what it is. Yeah. Because if you didn't know about the yellow sweater or the pearls or the loaded baked potato or the buttermilk or the, all those little things, yeah, or Mary, yeah, those things really, they make it both humorous but also vivid, I think. Yeah.
This is how she took such a menial task,
Mm-hmm.
made it in such a learning experience.
Mm-hmm. Found meaning. Mm-hmm. It's an example. Right. Not when is my shift over, but what do I learn from this experience? Yeah, it's an example to me when I want to rush through things.
Well, and how taking time to learn their names or use a name made such a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For a university, it's also the willingness to hear very different people and interact very differently.
That's a fantastic, nobody's ever said that when I've shared this essay, but that's such a good point, because one of the things that we care deeply about, especially these days, is helping students emerge from this education knowing how to love and interact with those who are different from them in any number of different ways. And that you're absolutely right. This is looking at somebody who feels like they're in a completely different, place in life and all of that, and yet finding ways to appreciate and care about these people. Yeah.
It added a great deal of understanding of the fidelity of her sensibilities. It was very personal that way.
Yeah.
The interaction with each person was different. Very got her personal view.
Her take on it, yeah. You wonder how many of these I think she probably could have gone on and on and on and on, right? With so many of the residents, yeah. Ross?
A bit of a courageous choice of topics for a college interest.
But it stands out because it is courageous. Have I ever read another essay that started with old people love clam chowder and pickled beets? Nope. And I probably won't again. So one of the things, this is a great example of answering the prompt, which we really do want students to do. Sometimes they drift and don't, but Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. I think this essay beautifully answers that. The understanding of others especially, but what it taught her, and things that she values as a result. I just thought that was really well done. That attention-catching first sentence, it is really helpful, I think, when a student has kind of what we call a hook at the beginning of their essay. If it starts off bland, it often stays kind of bland. That doesn't mean they're not admissible. It doesn't mean that the writing isn't, foundationally strong, but it doesn't help them stand out in a way that that you're seeking to do when you're applying for admission. If this student were up for a scholarship, this writing, as opposed to something that's just kind of more bland, this will get me every time. It just catches your attention and makes you want to read more. The sense of humor in this essay, I just love. I love it when I laugh when I'm reading. But it also manages to be incredibly touching. I mean, I almost get choked up at certain parts where she's talking about these lovely people. And that is a really fine balance, especially for a 17-year-old to be able to put together. Sometimes I've heard advice given to students, like by their high school counselor, that you should never write about other people. The college essay is about you, and so it's a real mistake to focus on other people in your essay. And I completely disagree because of an example like this. Now, you have to do it in the right way, but this writer talked about other people in a way that then reflected back on her sensibilities and her values and her experience and her growth and all of those things that the prompt was asking for. I learned so much about her because of the way she was seeing and reflecting these other people. There is a familiarity in this storytelling. It's a little different than the first one, but it is similar in that it's not flowery, it's not highly structured or searching to use vocabulary that's not typically within, the norm for a 17-year-old. It's just very familiar, and it creates that storytelling and kind of picture painting atmosphere that is so lovely. And like the first one, she adds in all of those details that already came up of, that help paint that picture, the yellow sweater, the pearls, the coffee cups, just makes it really, really nice. And then I can't help but really appreciate the values that come through in this essay. This young person who is able to say, I will be grateful for having learned from this person, how does she put it? Dorothy has inspired in me to relish in the comfort of daily intricacies rather than dwell on the boredom of sameness. What an amazing lesson for this young person. Yeah, and they're observant about these people and then taking away from that these incredible values. And I think it's all written with a level of tenderness and care for them that is lovely, even though there's also humor, a little bit of humor, but it's very tender. AI could never write this. You're seeing, this is the exact example of why I'm saying it just isn't welcome in this space, because it cannot do these things. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple of things. First, I just wanted to say what they've done in the essay is really show, not tell. And that's why showing these people and their oddness or whatever allowed us to see what she has learned, and that was just so wonderful. But how do you know it's a her?
Well, because I know the rest of the application. I read the rest of the application, so I know. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, she does say the name Katie at the beginning of the essay, so there is that clue. I don't know that it matters. In the first essay, that's a male writer, but sometimes when people hear that, they assume they hear it as a female. Yeah, yeah. I just happen to know the full context, but I don't know that it ultimately matters.
I also appreciated that we were talking about gratitude, that being a server, that repetitiveness, that could be very boring, and she's really embraced it.
Yeah, it's like the topic of the first guy moved. Very, very common experience. Having a job as a server, very common experience for lots of high school kids. You know, there's nothing unique about that. But the way she wrote about that is what makes it unique. And that's what they're always searching for when they're trying to pick their topic, is what's the one experience that I've had that nobody else in the world has had? And that's pretty hard to, put a finger on. So it's not finding the one thing, it's writing in a way that only you can do. So I think we have time for one more. Is that okay? Yeah.
The last question, did she get in?
She did get in, yeah.
And did she get out? She's still in.
Okay, I'll give full disclosure here, because I have to get permission to read these. So this is my daughter's essay. I think it's pretty good. She did not choose Willamette because at the time that she was choosing to go to college, her mother was here and her sister was here. And she loves us both very much, but she wanted her own space a little bit. So she's a senior in a college very much like Willamette-Denison University, which is in Ohio. So she got in there, and she will get out, and she's thriving. So.
Before you go on, can you give us a glimpse of why other colleges don't care that ChatGPT is being used? What's the other argument
So
besides money?
Yeah, the question is why do some colleges not care that ChatGPT might be being used? And I think most of us that have a shape anything like Willamette's, where we are doing holistic review, where we have actual interaction with our students in the classroom on a daily basis. It's not just 300-400 person lecture halls. I think we all have real concern about it. I think it is the places where they just weren't assessing writing really in the beginning stage to begin with, or in the application stage to begin with. It doesn't really matter because they're not really taking that into account. They're just looking at the GPA and the test scores, or they have such expansive admission policies, they really conserve any student regardless of the writing ability. So in that case, the thing that bothers me about that is those students are still having to jump through the same hoops of submitting all of these credentials, and then they really aren't, don't determine anything. Okay, let's do one more. So this one, I love this prompt, and we see this prompt a lot. The lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? I wasn't always at peace with myself. When I was a kid, my favorite game to play was superheroes. My sister Rebecca and I would put on our dress-up capes and transform into Dogwoman and Glaceon, saviors of the universe. The nights where we teamed up with the neighborhood kids were especially exciting. Our villains couldn't stand a chance against the combined powers and friendship. We didn't need much, just our imaginations. In those easy days, it was easy to pretend I was invincible. When I wasn't putting out fires and blasting bad guys, I was the gifted student. Everywhere I heard it, from my teachers, church members, even the ladies at my mom's book club. You must be so proud of your Sarah. Such a smart, driven girl, they would say. She's going to outshine us all someday. And I did so want that to be true. trying my hand at soccer, basketball, dance, theater, and the violin. Year after year, I grew up very secure with the mentality that everything would always be like this. I had confidence, but the cheap kind, the temporary kind, the shiny new plastic half off with this coupon kind. It was handed to me, and I had yet to earn it. When I got to high school, everything changed. There were smarter kids, more talented kids, more popular kids. I started to gain weight after middle school's growth spurt, growing steadily more self-conscious about my chunky thighs and fleshy arms. Freshman year was the first true wake-up, the first time I had to fight hard to keep my confidence, and also the year I experienced my first real taste of failure. That fall, I decided on a whim to join the swim team. I thought, I love to swim. This will be a good way to meet some people and conquer another new experience. I was completely unprepared for the grueling daily 3-hour workouts, short rests, and competitive spirit that awaited me upon joining the team. I knew I was a curvy girl who had a closer relationship with books and the stage than with the grind of sports. What was I thinking? How could I have believed that I was ready? I was consistently the slowest person on the team, and my failure initially drove me into the mentality of quitting. After one particularly rotten day, I had almost completely made up my mind. I was biking home from practice that chilly December evening, swim bag hitting my ankles, thinking about how lousy my flip turns were and that I would never be able to catch up to the other swimmers. What's wrong with me? I thought. Everything should have been perfect like it used to be. And as the rush of frustration started to cool down, I began to question it. Why? Why do I have to make every little thing I do better than everyone else? Why do I have to be the best to feel like I'm worth something? That evening, it was like something clicked in my head. I was good enough. Maybe I did lack power in my thick legs. Maybe I had come up for air more often than the rest of the team. Maybe a graceful flip turn was something I'd only dreamed about executing. But after all that, I was good enough. And in the months and years following that night, I grew into someone I never could have imagined all those years ago, playing with my friends in capes. I wasn't exceptionally gifted. I wasn't a prodigy. And I certainly wasn't invincible. But I had regained my confidence. And this time it was real. I had beaten the worst bad guy of all, my insecurity. Now the next step is saving the world. What do you like about that one? Everything. You like everything about that one? Really vulnerable. Yep. But just done in such a matter-of-fact way, just telling her story.
I thought she came back to it and by saving the world, she started off as if they were moving fictitiously.
Yep. Yeah, she does a beautiful job of wrapping things back around. Yeah.
You follow along with her emotional journey.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, kudos to their English writing teachers in high school. All three of them had excellent teachers. It's obvious.
I agree, yeah. And I always I just wonder if they're readers, because I just always think the best writers are readers, and you wonder how much that was fostered in some of these kids. There we go. Superheroes, like the other one, it definitely answers the prompt. It's asking about a time you felt failure. And so often, I will say, we get essays about the loss of the big game. And that is a real experience of failure to student athletes, and it's understandable why they pick that as a topic. It is very hard for them to write about it in a way that looks different from one another, so it doesn't become unique. It gets monotonous. This was an example of writing about failure in a way that I thought was really unique. What you just said, Gwenellen, is she starts something at the top about superheroes and then ties it back in at the end just by mentioning those capes and that lack of invincibility, and that's really nicely done. Very, very vulnerable. Very relatable. I think so many young women could read this and just feel exactly in her shoes. The prompt asks about failure and kind of growth that comes from that, and she absolutely displays that beautifully. You see growth. Like you said, you see her journey, her emotional journey through this essay, and the challenges she faced and the growth at the end. And I love the positive note at the end. Sometimes the essays where they choose the prompt about failure, you don't always go away feeling great. And not that that's the job of this essay, is to make us feel good, but it is really nice when you can see that growth and it ends with this, just positivity. And then I do think this already been said a little bit, but thinking about failure in a different way than so many of the students do when they choose this prompt shows creativity to me. And there's just a good deal of creativity in this essay, in so many aspects of it. So, okay, are we out of time? Time for more questions? Anybody have other questions?
Cassia again. Do you have an essay there that you could share with us that was written by ChatGPT so that we could compare them? I would love to see one.
That would have been a good thing to bring. I don't have one with me that I can share right now. Probably could. Yeah. There's no soul to the ChatGPT essays. There's something about them that is just flat. I couldn't hear that.
Sorry. Have you considered using something that is kind of a badly written essay as part of this?
I have done that before, yes. When I do writing workshops with students, I sometimes do incorporate, it's helpful for students to both hear strong essays and what that looks like, and the fact that it truly is achievable, and then to kind of juxtapose that with one where clearly the effort isn't there, and the standards are just different. And yes, I sometimes use those for students too. I have to be really careful about that because, again, I need permission to share essays, and it's hard to say, can I share your bad example? But
AI-generated essay. I just did it.
you did it that fast. Oh.
All I had to do was type into Perplexity, write me a college essay based on a failure of some kind. So if you'd like to read it, here it is.
Okay, you guys want me to read it? Yeah. Resilience forged in failure. It was the third round of the state science fair, and my project, an automated irrigation system, sat on the judging table full of tangled wires and my hopes for a ribbon. As the judges approached, I tried to steady my hands, but I knew the system's main sensor had malfunctioned just hours earlier. When the panel asked for a demonstration, the pump sputtered and then stopped, failing to deliver even a trickle of water. My face burned as I tried and failed to fix the issue on the spot. In that moment, my confidence collapsed. For weeks, I had worked late into the night, poring over circuit diagrams and coding in bursts, fueled by caffeine and optimism. Friends and family assured me I would do well, but now I watched as my effort unraveled in front of an audience. I stammered through my explanation, acutely aware of the disappointment in my voice. Afterward, I spent hours replaying the event, convinced I'd squandered my one chance to prove myself. As the initial embarrassment faded, a harsher lesson emerged. It wasn't the failed sensor that hurt most. It was realizing I had staked my value on a single moment. I began to see that my struggle was not just technical, but personal. In my eagerness to succeed, I had ignored advice from my mentor about backup plans, clinging to the idea that sheer effort would generate success. I hadn't communicated my concerns with teammates, worried they might see my doubts as weakness. After the competition, I was tempted to abandon the project altogether. Instead, I decided to face the failure head on. I approached my mentor, swallowed my pride, and asked for advice. Together, we dissected what had gone wrong: faulty wiring, a fragile sensor, and above all, my reluctance to ask for help when I sensed trouble. I rebuilt the system for a local community garden, enlisting others to troubleshoot and contribute ideas. This time, the process worked. The garden flourished, and so did my confidence. I realized that failure is not a verdict, but a turning point, a place where new habits and humility are born. Most importantly, the experience taught me that asking for help and sharing responsibility does not make me less capable. It makes success more meaningful. Now, whether I am tackling group projects or personal challenges, I remember that setbacks are seeds for growth. I enter new opportunities with a balance of determination and openness, no longer afraid to fail, but eager to learn what lies beyond each setback. It's actually not so bad. That one's better than some that I've seen. I still think you get less of the person. There's a lot about the project. There's some good detail, and there's certainly a good lesson in this, but there's less values. There's some vulnerability, certainly, in learning to ask questions.
There were two telltales. I don't know how many 17-year-olds are caffeine-fueled in the middle of the night. And the other is she used the word squandered.
I noticed that too. Squander, yeah, unusual word choice.
I'm a mentor without an identification of who this mentor is. Right?
Yeah, it would be far
the
more.
mentor has a title but not a name.
Yeah, and it would be far more likely to say teacher when you're a student rather
Right,
than
right,
mentor.
right.
Yeah. It is scary though. Look at how quickly that could be done, and the student cuts and pastes that. And what if they can't actually put a sentence together at all and would arrive at Willamette, you know, potentially, yeah. Other? Yeah, exactly. They might get in but won't get out. Yeah.
My name is Linda. My question is, do you know the reason for the decline in the teaching of writing in our high schools, and did the pandemic have a role in that, and maybe to what degree?
I mean, I think the pandemic has affected everything. I think these kids there's just huge learning losses, and we're still seeing that and are going to see that for a long time. My daughter, not the one who wrote this essay, but my other daughter who went to Willamette, is a fourth grade teacher right now in her very first year of teaching. And boy, she's in the trenches. They cannot read. They're in fourth grade and they can't read. And they were in kindergarten when the shutdown happened. So yes, I would say that the pandemic has had a huge effect on both reading and writing and the cumulative effect of that. I also think there are just demographic changes that are causing teachers to make adjustments because there's such pressure on teachers to move kids through and to try to keep graduation rates up even when students aren't actually meeting benchmarks. So it's a very, very complicated set of problems, and you add to it this incredibly fast-moving technology and the worry that students will just think they don't have to learn to write, right? That it will become a completely lost art if there isn't the insistence that in certain conditions they have to do this unassisted, they have to learn. Yeah.
I'm Mark, and I too asked ChatGPT to write an entry exam of 250 words to Willamette University, and I'm astounded that in less than a minute it lied and created details that were imaginary.
Yeah.
And and the one thing that was in the thread of what you read and what I've read here is there's no no transparency of their personal ethics. So the liar can't talk about ethics.
Right, right. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Any other last questions, or did we cover everybody? A lot of good conversation. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you.